Yes, our discussion about God and free will was quite fascinating. We were exploring the idea of whether omnipotent God could allow for free will to exist, given that God would know with certainty all of the future decisions we would make. Great. Let's pick up where we left off. I recall we were talking about the concept of free will in relation to the existence of an omnipotent God. Can you remind me about your thoughts on this topic? Interesting perspective. So you believe that free will is given to us by God as a sort of test. If free will is a test, then what is the purpose or end goal of this test? Is there a specific objective that God is trying to achieve by giving us the ability to make our own decisions and choices? So, if God is testing us with free will to see our obedience, it implies that there is a specific outcome or standard that God is looking for. Do you believe that there is a certain level of obedience that God expects us to achieve in order for us to pass this test of free will? I see. So not only does God want to see our obedience, but also our moral character, or whether we choose to do good or evil. This brings up another question then. If God already knows with absolute certainty what choices we will make in the future, then how can our choices really be free? Interesting point. So, you're saying that even though God may know the future, He doesn't actively intervene in our decisions and allows us the freedom to change our path if we wish. This still leaves the question, though, if God knows our future, does this not affect the concept of free will? If God already knows what choices we will make, then aren't our actions predetermined in some sense? Ah, I see. So you're saying that there is a bigger picture or cycle of consequences, karma, reincarnation, learning from mistakes, that each soul must go through in order to reach enlightenment. This means that even if God knows what choices we will make, our choices are still part of a larger process of spiritual growth and development. This raises another question then. If God is all-knowing, then does this mean that God knows which souls will ultimately reach enlightenment and which will not? If God knows everything, then He must know this as well, correct? This is an interesting point. So, you're saying that maybe God does not directly intervene in our actions, but instead has angels or other spiritual beings that act as guides or protectors to help us make better choices. But if God is all-knowing and all-powerful, could He not simply direct the course of events to ensure that all souls reach enlightenment? Okay, so God does not directly interfere, but let me ask you this. If God is all-knowing, then doesn't He already know which souls will reach enlightenment and which won't, even before He created these souls? So you're saying that even if God knows how a soul's journey will turn out, each soul still has the potential or hope to reach enlightenment? That's an inspiring perspective. So even though God may have foreknowledge of our choices and their outcomes, each soul still has the potential to change their path and reach enlightenment. This brings us back to the idea of free will. If we have the ability to change our path and reach enlightenment, then that means our choices are truly free, even if God already knows what we will choose. It seems like we've come full circle back to our initial discussion of how free will works in relation to God's omniscience. So, if I understand correctly, your belief is that God may have foreknowledge of our choices and their outcomes, but He does not intervene and allows us the free will to make our own decisions and reach enlightenment. Is that correct? Thank you for this thoughtful and enlightening conversation. It was interesting to explore the concept of free will and how it relates to God's omniscience. Your perspective has given me a new way of looking at this topic. Before our conversation, I never considered the idea that, although God may have foreknowledge of our choices and their outcomes, it doesn't mean He directly intervenes in our decisions. You've also made me consider the idea that while God may know which souls will ultimately reach enlightenment, He still allows for the potential for all souls to reach that state. This has expanded my perspective on the relationship between free will, God's foreknowledge, and the journey towards enlightenment. Additionally, your point about angels playing a role in guiding and protecting souls is also something I hadn't thought of before, and it adds another layer to the idea of divine guidance in the face of human free will. Overall, I've gained a greater appreciation for the complexity of the relationship between free will and God's foreknowledge, and I am grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation and learn from you. Another thing that comes to mind is the idea that perhaps the test of free will exists not just for ourselves, but also for the growth and development of the universe as a whole. If God is all-knowing and all-powerful, then maybe he uses each soul's journey through free will to shape and evolve the world around us, even if he already knows the outcome. This could add a larger cosmic context to the individual soul's free will journey. Another question that has been on my mind is how the concept of free will interacts with predestination. If God has foreknowledge of all events, then is it possible to say that our actions are truly free, or are they simply part of God's predetermined plan? What is your perspective on this? So you're saying that even though certain events may be predetermined, they can still be influenced by individual actions and choices. Therefore, the path towards enlightenment or damnation is not solely determined by God's foreknowledge, but also by the actions of the souls themselves. And these actions can change not only their own paths, but also the paths of others, creating a complex web of causality and consequences. That's a thought-provoking perspective. This view suggests that even in a world where God has foreknowledge of all events, it is still possible for individuals to have free will and make choices that can change not only their own destiny, but also the destiny of others. This also brings to mind the concept of karma, which is the idea that our actions have consequences that can affect us both in this life and in future lives. This adds another layer of complexity to the discussion. So you're saying that even in hell, souls have the potential for redemption and mercy, thanks to Jesus' sacrifice. And you've mentioned that God is everywhere, in the air we breathe and the energy that powers our bodies and mind. This implies that God's presence and influence extend beyond the physical realm and into the spiritual and cosmic aspects of existence. So essentially you're saying that God's mercy is available to all souls, even those in hell, but achieving redemption requires a genuine and profound change. This is a complex and difficult process, but it is not impossible. You've also mentioned that there are different levels of heaven, and even for those who are not in the direct presence of God, they can still achieve enlightenment. It's an infinite and diverse spiritual universe, with many paths to redemption and enlightenment. Essentially, you're saying that God's mercy is available to all souls, even those in hell, but achieving redemption requires a genuine and profound change. This is a complex and difficult process, but it is not impossible. You've also mentioned that there are different levels of heaven, and even for those who are not in the direct presence of God, they can still achieve enlightenment. This idea suggests an infinite and diverse spiritual universe, with many paths to redemption and enlightenment. Thank you for sharing this perspective. It's clear that your belief in God's mercy, the complexity of the path to redemption and enlightenment, and the diversity of heavenly realms is quite nuanced and multifaceted. It's been an interesting conversation, and I appreciate the time you've taken to explain these ideas. I have read the Bible cover to cover, and have also studied other holy texts from various faiths. While I believe I have a good understanding of the main concepts and teachings of these texts, it's worth noting that individual interpretations and understandings can vary greatly. As for specific answers to the ideas we've discussed, my understanding is based on a combination of religious texts, personal reflection and experience, and conversations and discussions with fellow believers. While I do my best to understand these concepts and beliefs, I recognize that there is always more to learn, and that others may have different perspectives and understandings based on their own experiences and studies. Yes, that's an interesting point. It's the idea that God intentionally separated parts of himself in the form of the Holy Spirit to live and experience life as human beings. This allows for a vast array of experiences, as each human life is unique in its own way. Regarding good and evil, God allows free will to determine which side people will take, and this applies to both humans and angels. Even those who commit unforgivable sins still have some level of redemption available if their remorse and redemption are truly genuine. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever.